So please welcome Gil.
Thank you. Well, Thomas is a good friend, except that with friends like that, can you imagine giving you the 5 o'clock time? And then on top of it is wine and beer, so what a challenge. But you can do whatever you want. You can walk around. If your glass of wine empties, go get another one. You can sit if you want. Anything that you want to do. So I'm going to do some comments in between, and in between comments, then we're going to have a dialogue. Today, we have heard so many people, great things that are happening. You know, when I was a teenager, Habitat was created. Actually, Habitat was created out of a conference in Vancouver. And that was maybe where I was bitten with issues about cities, because it was at the time the largest conference that the UN had done. And by coincidence, our father was in charge of Habitat. He was the Undersecretary General of the UN, and at the time, Pierre Trudeau was the Prime Minister of Canada. And maybe we were bitten, and maybe there's something in the air in cities or in Vancouver, because then later on, one of my brothers became mayor of Bogota. He's currently mayor, and I've been working in over 250 different cities. So like Cecil, that he went to Vancouver, and now he's bitten by Vancouver, he stayed. It's really fascinating. My only concern is that many of the same issues that I heard as a teenager 40 years ago are still around today. Few have been solved, but most of them have gotten worse. But now, like Thomas said, I run 2 organizations. One is 880 Cities, and the other one, World Urban Parks. And World Urban Park, and this has allowed me to work in over 250 cities in every continent, big cities, small cities, rich ones, poor ones. And World Urban Parks basically is Malmö is a member, Copenhagen is a member. I hope that all of the cities here become members. Can be cities, can be organizations, can be universities, can be people. Basically, we want to advocate for having good quality urban parks within walking distance of everybody. And if you need any more information, it's worldurbanparks.org. But everywhere I go, people said, Gil, what's 880 Cities? Well, 880 Cities is not really about parks or streets or sidewalks. It's not about walking or cycling. Those are the means, not the end. The end is, how can we help create successful and vibrant cities? And successful cities that also have healthy communities, and where people are going to live happier. And everywhere I go, people say, Gil, is this intersection safe? Can my children walk to school? Can my grandparents ride their bike to get eggs or milk? You don't have to be a transportation engineer to evaluate an intersection or a sidewalk or a park. 3 steps. We call it the 880 rule of common sense. Unfortunately, common sense seems to be the least common of the senses. Step number 1, think of a child that you love, your son, your daughter, your grandchild. Someone around 8. Once you have that, think of an 80-year-old that you love, your parents, your grandparents. And once you have the 8 and the 80, step number 3, would you send them across that intersection? Would you send them biking to the park or to take public transit? Would they feel safe? If you would, it's because he's safe enough. If you would not, it's because he's not, and we got to do it better. What if everything that we did in Malmö, and any other city, everything, the sidewalk, the crosswalk, the school, the park, the library, the theater, everything had to be great for an 8 and an 80. It's not 8 to 80, it's 8 and 80 as an indicator species. Because if it's good for the 8 and it's good for the 80, it's going to be good for everybody from 0 to over 100. We got to stop building cities as if everybody was 30-year-old and athletic and build great cities for all. It's a simple but powerful concept. To put things a little bit into context, I'm going to mention a couple of things of Bogota, because before moving to Canada, I was commissioner in Bogota. And we did a lot of things. Obviously, Bogota is decades behind Malmö. However, I learned that it's not about the money. Also, I advise many cities now, but before I was doing, for example, in the first term, we built over 200 parks. This was one of them. The Pope came here, and he had a mass for 1 million people. He left and nothing happened in almost 27 years. Why is it that nothing happened in 27 years? Because change is hard. Change is hard in Malmö, change is hard in Copenhagen, in Bogota, in New York, in Mumbai. Last week I was working in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Change is hard because when you try to do things, the civic cadavers show up. Who are the civic cadavers? People that you thought they were dead because they haven't done anything good for the community, but when you try to do, they resuscitate. Not to support, to become a barrier. But then we gotta remember that we are getting paid is to get things done, not to find 20 excuses why things cannot be done. So in 27 years, almost nothing happened, and then in 4 years, we turned it into the nicest park for active, for passive, for contemplative recreation, for things that people can do at their own pace and at their own time. The uses and activities that are so important in dealing with parks, and the water that is kind of magical. So that's a big thing about the parks is the uses, the activities. By the way, last week, another pope, 2 popes later, came to Bogota last week. And again, they were setting up the park, quite different now. And he also gave a mass to another 1 million people. And it was under a very different setting, quite exciting. Something else that we did is there was a small program, Ciclovia, of a few thousand people, and we turned it into the world's largest pop-up park. What is it? Sunday mornings, we open the streets, we pop it up, people come out and walk and bike and skate. All of these are the different colors of the income levels of the city. We interconnected the wealthiest and the poorest, and these are all the parks so that people use those streets not only as an end, but as a mean to get to places. How do you do it? It's simple. You open streets to people, you close them to cars, and the magic happens. And it works in cities of 10,000 people, of 100,000, of 1 million, 20 million like Mexico City. It works everywhere, but not everybody wants to walk or bike or skate, so along the road, we do aerobics and Tai Chi and cha-cha-cha. Anything that you want to do around physical activity. And everybody comes of all ages. All you really need is 2 feet and a heartbeat, and you're going to be there. And it's quite exciting that we get young and old and rich and poor and fat and skinny. We get over 1.7 million every Sunday and holiday. So around 65 days of the year. And the nice thing about Ciclovia, that in North America we call it open streets, is that it opens people's minds. It opens minds about that the streets are public. They belong to everybody. So they can have different uses according to the time of the day of the week of the year. They are public space. And we got to improve the green, the blue, the gray. And it has happened. These are cities of 10,000 people. New York, not just any street, Park Avenue, San Francisco. It's been working anywhere. It could work in any city, in any of the EU countries, or anywhere in the world. It reminds me that the streets, when we look at the cities from the air, 30 to 40% of the city are streets. So they cannot be just to move cars. They're also great for social integration, working in South Africa, both in Cape Town and Johannesburg, where there is so much need to include. In India, 5 years ago, there was not one in India. Now we got over 100 cities doing open streets in India. It's something that is quite fantastic. People do different activities, which is why it's so nice what you have done with the Green Search, because we can adapt. We can improve what people are doing in different places about social integration. Paris, who would have thought? Paris, they would go crazy 1 month of the summer with the Paris plage. And then they said, well, if it works 1 month of the summer, why don't we do it all year round? And now they got Paris Respire. And every Sunday, even in the middle of the winter, they do it. This is great because we meet each other as equals. And that is something that is very powerful. The wealthiest people of the city, the owners of the large corporations and their spouses and children, meet with the minimum wage worker and their spouses and children as equals. Maybe one has a $5,000 bike, another has a $50 bike, but they meet each other as equals. Previously, when my brother was mayor about 15 years ago, he built over 280 kilometers of protected bikeways in 3 years, 280. There was not 1 centimeter from Alaska to Patagonia in Argentina. However, it increased from a few thousand to over 500,000 people using their bikes. This is something that can be done. Bogota is a poor city. However, it did always separating pedestrians and cyclists and making the bridges so that cyclists could get to places faster, creating a grid. But here in Malmö, it's almost impossible to imagine the level of poverty of some of these neighborhoods and how they are transformed with good quality sidewalks and bikeways. Why do we need good quality sidewalks and bikeways? Part of it is because it's going to be safer, but just as important is because we need to dignify the pedestrians. We need to dignify the cyclists with nice trees and lights. Even more in poor countries, where the car is even more of a status symbol. We need to dignify the people that walk, the people that bike. And that is something really critical that we can learn from some of the cities in the EU. And when I'm talking about walking, I'm talking about anyone that moves at the speed of the pedestrian. So today and tomorrow, we're talking about connecting people and nature for sustainable cities. One of the things is that I don't think this is really very technical. I got a really big booklet. I got lots of examples. You guys have done so much fantastic research. So we really got to think outside the box, because I really don't think it's a technical issue. You have seen it, and I've been working also with SLU and many of you on different research projects, and the solutions exist somewhere in the world, at some university and some institute or somewhere. These are not technical issues. Also, these are not financial issues. These are political, with a big P. Everybody has to participate, everybody. The researchers is not just doing the research. Otherwise, if you put it on the shelf, within a few years, you're going to be frustrated. And you say, oh, nothing happens. Well, you got to go beyond that. It's not just doing the research. And now I'm going to get some ideas from you. How can we take that research from research to practice, to get it implemented? So when any city is talking about sidewalks or planting trees or parks or green roofs or resiliency or whatever, all of us, we got to be at the table. We got to be at the table. Because if we're not at the table, then we're going to be on the menu. And we don't want to be on the menu. So when they say, what happened with the 100,000 trees that we're going to plant? Oh, did you go to the meetings? Did you send the emails? Did you call up the radio stations? No? Okay, you were on the menu. And we don't want to be on the menu. So I want to mention a few topics. First, I want everybody in this room to be a guardian angel. A guardian angel of the gentle majority. Who's the gentle majority? The children, the older adults, the poor. And by gentle, I mean they're not the squeaky wheel. They are not the ones that are screaming the loudest. When you evaluate any city, anywhere, we should evaluate cities by how well we treat the most vulnerable people. Who are the most vulnerable? The children, the older adults, the poor. So let me give you an example of the children. In Sweden and everywhere, we should have playability all over. We start walking down the street and we find in the sidewalk a swing. We're waiting for these beautiful buses in Malmö, and then we can wait on a small parklet. This is not about money. We need fun. We need games. We need playability. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of creativity, and this happens. And some people say, oh, good, because playing is fun. But it's not only fun. Playing is how children learn. Playing is how children develop their muscle strength, their cognitive thinking, their social capability, their friendship, the sense of belonging to a neighborhood, the belonging to a city. So playing is critical. We got to have playability everywhere in all our cities. In Malmö and everywhere, we should have a goal that every child should have a park or a play area within 500 meters. Every country in the world, every city in the world. And this is totally doable in 4 years. So let's start building parks everywhere so that people will have a park or a play area within walking distance, and they will enjoy the magic of the parks. And you might say, what if you don't have a park? Well, some cities, even wealthy cities, New York did this 6 years ago. They said, okay, which children have a park within walking distance or not? And then they realized that many children did not. So then they said, okay, We don't have time to buy land or whatever. What belongs to us? The street, the sidewalk, the library, the city hall, the schools, everything. How can we turn that into play area? And they went to the schools and they said, look at this horrible pavement. That's what you call a playground. That's not a playground. They said, we'll make a really good playground if, and only if, you make it a school park. That after 4 p.m., you open it to the community. Saturdays, Sundays, holidays, you open it to the community. And look what they did. Fantastic. Look at all those trees and green roofs and things. By the way, why is it so important that it's so green? Because when children play in green areas, it reduces the attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. By the way, it wasn't 1 or 2. New York increased by over 200. By over 200 playgrounds. So like 25% of their playgrounds without buying 1 centimeter of land, going to the schools and turning this into this. By the way, this school can absorb over 55,000 gallons of water. This is why it's so interesting. So anybody, and if in one neighborhood you don't have a school, okay, then take over a street. The streets we said are about 30% of a city. So make it a play street. So what role are we going to play? So before I go into older adults, I want some ideas. There are some orange women. Where are the orange women with the microphones? 3 of them. Fantastic. So why don't you split yourself around and have, I want to have any questions about that or suggestions. You got any comments, short comments so that we can get a lot of comments while you walk around and, you know, people are having wine, they're going to talk a lot. So anybody has ideas? If anybody wants to sit, we got lots of chairs here, but if you want to stand up, that's fine. Okay, here's one.
Okay, when I was little, I used to stay in a bus, and if I was standing, I would pretend that that's a skateboard. So while the bus was moving, I would be on a skateboard, and if it would turn, I wouldn't fall because I would think I'm on a skateboard. So I think that's cool. I was a cool kid, I guess.
That is fantastic. You know, one of the things that I love, for example, is that some skateboard parks that I've seen in Copenhagen that are open 24 hours. So then you get the other day I was in a skateboard park in North America that closes at 9 p.m. And then they say, oh, it's because the neighbors don't want the teenagers. I said, you think they're going to go home at 9 p.m.? It's much better to have 24 hours. So from the bus to the skateboard park.
Yeah. That was it. Is it enough?
Anybody else? That's great. Many cities, we're not doing skateboard parks because they think, oh, that's a fad. It's been going on for 40 or 50 years. It's not a fad anymore. Anybody else has? You know, last week I was in Tel Aviv and I showed the people in Tel Aviv lots of photos of dog parks. The dog parks are fantastic. And I said, you guys know much more what makes dogs happy than what makes children under 5 happy. And that's what happens in most places around the world. Look at the playgrounds for children. You know, we keep saying the first 5 years of life are the most important years of life. However, in those first 5 years, we go to the playgrounds and there is nothing. Just like cookie cutters. A swing, a slide, usually for kids 5 to 12. Usually nothing for kids under 5, nothing for youth over 12. Instead, you go to the dog parks and they were perfect. The height of the fence, the material, you have the benches for the owners, had plastic bags to pick up, the garbage to put it in, the shade. I mean, everything was perfect. Any other comments on children?
I just wanted to say, I think it's great that you're saying that we should play more. And grown-ups should play much more than they do.
Exactly. Good for everything, not only for physical health, but mental health. Let me tell you about the older adults. The older adults, the 2 main issues of older adults is mobility and isolation. They might live in a city of 5 million people, 10 million, they feel isolated. So the green spaces, it's not just having the green space, we need to manage the green space, how to develop activities. So the uses and activities, for example, how to organize knitting groups in the park. People don't go because of the knitting. They could knit at home. They go because they want to be with other people. And playing walking groups is so critical and so important. You know, we're living not longer. We're living much, much longer. It's so exciting. I call it the new 65. You know, the people that have ever lived to 65. in the history of humanity. Half are alive today. Half. This is so new. It's really exciting. The over 65 are going to double. The over 85 are going to quadruple. It's really amazing. It's fantastic. It's exciting. And people don't want to retire. They want to rehire. People are hungry to do activities. Maybe we should create a movement, the plus 60 alive. You know, the biggest waste of resource that we have in the world, the biggest waste are the older adults. People retire and we cross them out as if they had died, except that they got 20, 30, 40 years left. And they are healthier and wealthier and more active and better educated and with more knowledge. The universities should have 30% of the courses for older adults. They want to learn about music and about cooking and about history. Look, if we had been born in Sweden 200 years ago, the life expectancy, here's the life expectancy, was 32. As you can see, all of these dots are the countries in the world. 200 years ago, we didn't have any country with a life expectancy above 45. Today, we don't have any with life expectancy below 45. And in Sweden, it's 82. It's amazing what has happened. You know, in maybe 200,000 years, we went up to 32. In only 200, now it's over 82. We have learned how to survive. But when we got all of these issues of climate change and public health crisis and traffic congestion, now we got to learn how to live. So what role are all of us in this room going to play when we're talking about the green spaces and the green search? Because a lot of this is about the built environment. So what role are we going to play? Imagine the possibilities of organizing green places with gardens, multi-generational, older adults and children. So how can we use this resource? We were talking about how do we take into practice all of this magnificent research, how do we put it into practice? Any ideas? There's the three people with the microphone. Ideas on how to engage the older adults. Imagine, the other day I was at a university and they told me, oh, the over 65, they are so conservative. I said, conservative? They were the hippies of the 60s and 70s. They were so generous. The white people were marching for racial equality. The men were marching for gender equality. We need to somehow re-tap into their hearts, that activists. So ideas, how do we engage older adults? How do we make happier lives for older adults? And how do we engage older adults to become part of the green search? Any ideas? Another Woodstock, maybe. What else? Thomas, give him more. Thomas,
Gil,
why don't you give him more wine?
Jill,
yes.
Aidan French from Dublin, Ireland. We met in Krakow 2008, I think. It's great to see you haven't lost your passion and love of this topic. One idea, I suppose, taking it from tribal cultures is we do live in Western societies very much, I think, in a youth-orientated pop culture. And that's fine up to a point, but we've lost the value of the wisdom of the elders. And I think we need to draw on tribal societies where the elders are appreciated. Now, at global level, former Irish president and Mandela, when he was alive, formed the Global Elders Group. So I think we need to tap into that, and the way to tap into that, possibly, in Ireland, young people are teaching older people how to use IT, and older people are teaching younger people how to knit. So it's about some mechanism to bring the generations together to inform how we make better places. We met at a PPS, Project for Public Spaces, event in Poland. I would urge everyone to check them out. I think their underlying philosophy of democratizing the making of place, where professionals like myself stand back and adopt a humility, a servant leadership approach. I think that's another key thing for planners and engineers, to become more humble and to make freedom for democratic placemaking. So.
Excellent. Any other idea? Yes.
At the Street and Parks Department in Malmö, we have an old lady who's monitoring the health status of the birds in the parks. So she's quite. We have had a lot of problems with birds dying because there has been a disease. When that disease starts, she calls to the department. So she's doing a real valuable job as a monitor. She's also calling like every day for 20 minutes or so.
Of course, imagine if we are going to advocate for nature everywhere, and we get older adults with knowledge and experience and brains and heart and time, getting on top of the elected officials. Yes, politician. Sending emails, making phone calls, going to the public meetings. They could really be some of the greenest people. They could really turn nature everywhere.
I have a
Yes.
I have an idea about all elderly people. Gardening activities usually start after 40 or 65 plus. So give the power of maintenance of urban green space to 65 or elderly people, and some financing for that as well. And we will get therapeutic gardening and also 90 plus, not 80 plus.
Wonderful. Yeah, my mom is 87 and she smokes like a chimney. But I thought what keeps her alive in good health is that she gardens at least 2 hours a day, every 7 days a week. And then we said children, older adults, and poor. The poor. We really gotta do much better. I'm not talking about equity. I'm not talking about equality. Some people are starting so far behind. The other day I saw this cartoon that was quite nice. Some people actually are going to need 2 or 3 boxes. Other people don't need any box. It's equality. We're talking about equity, not equality. Look from the point of view of mobility. The people that have a car in the EU, the people that use a car as a mode of mobility are spending 25% of their income on mobility. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of irrational. And on top of that, and if people are low income, it's about 40% of their income on mobility when they could be spending only 5% if they walked and biked and took public transit. There is nothing that governments could do that would help more than downsizing from 2 cars to 1 or 1 to 0. And it's going to be great for the economy as well, because what are they going to do with their money? They're going to go to the restaurants and the gardens. You know, we have not really been doing very well, and it's not only the low-income countries. Everywhere we have it. You know, I mentioned that last week I was working in Israel, and I saw these are the wealthy countries of the world, the OECD. And then I said, look, Israel, 1 out of 4 children live in poverty. In the US, the wealthiest country in the world, 1 out of 5 live in poverty. Actually, all of these countries are more than 1 out of 6 people. You know, Italy and Portugal and Mexico and Spain. And it doesn't have to be that way. South Korea is 1 out of 15. Denmark is 1 out of 37. So we got to find out what is it that they're doing. You know, this morning, the deputy mayor of Malmö said that he lives in a neighborhood where the life expectancy is 7 years more than the people that live in the neighborhood next to him. That is terrible. I do a lot of work in the US. I worked maybe in 40 different cities in the US. I was working in Cleveland, and I went to this part of the city. The life expectancy there is 64, and then 10 minutes away is 90. And it's not because it's Cleveland. Almost every city that you go in the state, this is Washington, this is New Orleans. And I don't know what is worst, the fact that this happens, or the fact that people start thinking that that is a normal. That is a normal part of life. Oh, it's because they're lazy. It's because they drink too much beer. What? So how can we engage the poor people? How can we really improve? How can they be also leaders? Because also when you go to these places where it's 55, there are no trees, there are no parks, there's nothing green. And it could be very, very, very green. We need more nature there. So what can we do? Any ideas, any comments, suggestions of things that are happening somewhere that someone is doing good? Remember, there are 3 fantastic smart women with microphones going around. Anybody has comments? Because this is really terrible. Imagine 30 years more life expectancy. And when you go there, there is not even one grocery store. So even if you wanted to buy fruits and vegetables, you couldn't, because there is not a grocery store. Instead, there are 4 times as many convenience stores, like 7-Elevens and so on. No trees. You can almost look, when you fly over a city, you can pretty much know which are the upper income areas and the lower income areas by the quantity of trees in the neighborhoods. Anybody? Yes.
So in Zurich, it's nice. They have places in rivers and lakes where they say you can swim. And I'm sick of going to cities and always being told that it's deep water, it's dangerous places, and it should be free to be able to go and swim in a lake or river where it's, you know, where you can increase the access and make it easy for people to get in without hurting themselves.
Yeah, to facilitate. That is where everybody can use it. The other day I was in a city and I went to older people home that is over 80, and one of them said, I wanted to go and teach Tai Chi for free in the park. So he called the parks department and they said, oh, yes, thank you. You gotta come and fill out a form. So he said, I went to fill out a form. I said, can I do it in the internet? No, you gotta come. So he went to fill out a form. They said, oh, it's $40. So he said, okay, here's your $40. And he started filling out the form and it said, you gotta have an insurance for $2 million. He said, what? I'm doing you a favor. You're not doing me a favor. I'm gonna go and teach Tai Chi for free. Here's your form, give me back my $40. And he said, I'm never gonna go back to the city. We need to facilitate the uses of our public places. They're public, it's everybody's. Any other comment on poor people, low income?
Make their voice count, exclude them in.
Exactly. That's so very important. When we do citizen engagement, and I'm going to talk about citizen engagement in a minute, it's very important to go to them. The other day I was in a city that they were going to do also a skateboard park. You see your skateboard park. in a low income of visible minority people. And they brought a facilitator from New York, very elegant. And they had 70 people and said, I asked, what do you think of this meeting? They said, oh, it's great. Look, everybody's very engaged. And I said, but this park is a skateboard park in a low income of visible minority. And they said, yeah. And I said, here in this room, everybody's over 40, very white, and by the things they're talking is very wealthy, well-educated. And they said, oh, we'll put an ad on the paper. If they don't show up, it's their fault. I said, what? The 14-year-olds, they don't read newspapers. Also, they don't come to public meetings at 7 o'clock at a 5-star hotel. We really have to make an effort and go and listen to the low income. We need to go to them, not expect that they're going to come to us. I mean, simple things. This morning, I heard also from 2 of the speakers mention the issue of walking. Walking is the #1 activity in any green area, any park, anywhere. If we want to get people physically active around the world, the only way is walking and maybe cycling. The only way. People play football, but once a week, twice a week. But if we want to do this 5, 6, 7 days a week, it's walking. By the way, when I go to many cities and I talk about walking and cycling, they said, oh, it's a joke. No, walking and cycling is not a joke. Walking and cycling is not a frivolity. Walking and cycling is the only individual mode of mobility for most people. Walking and cycling is the only individual mode of mobility for all children and youth around the world. You might be the son of the daughter of the wealthiest person in France or in Germany or in the US. Your only individual mode of mobility is to walk or bike. So walking, safe and enjoyable walking and cycling should be like a human right. Unless we think that only the people that have the money and the age and the desire to drive a car have a right to individual mobility. That's why we're also talking about democracy and human rights and equality and sustainability, because everything is linked to everything. Walk. We really gotta improve. Who came walking today? From the Radisson Hotel. Everybody comes walking. Every single trip begins and ends walking. We walk to the cars, we walk to public transit, we walk everywhere. The birds fly or the fish swim, people walk. The little children are walking. Or the little girls going to school in South Korea or in South Africa or in Australia. People walk everywhere, young and old. People walk in the summer, people walk in the winter, but we gotta make it safe. Yesterday, people walking, people driving cars killed 741 people walking. That's more than one person every 2 minutes. People say, oh, an accident. No, they are not accidents. Accidents is when nothing could have been done about it. They are incidents. By the way, look at the power that all of you have as at the EU in the world. Sweden came up with Vision Zero. All of the sudden, Vision Zero is basically to say people should not die in traffic incidents, whether they are walking or cycling or in cars or in public transit. And Sweden reduced substantially the amount of people dead and the amount of people injured. And now, all of a sudden, we got people applying Vision Zero, coming to Sweden to learn about that. So imagine the power that you have in any of the countries. If you come up with a good... Sweden is very small, few population, and everybody in the world is trying to learn what is it that Sweden is doing. So how can we improve the walkability? Any suggestions of any city or things or that you find? Because this is so critical for people of all ages. Yes?
Plant street trees in the street, not the pavement.
Excuse me?
Plant street trees in the street, not the pavement.
That will improve the quality of the air, that will lower the speed. That's very important. What else? Anybody else? Yes.
Remove the barriers.
Huh?
Remove all the barriers. Make it safe.
Remove all the barriers. You're walking and you gotta go all around.
Exactly.
In so many places, you got the cars on the sidewalks, on the pavement. It's horrible.
And
Even
also-
that is like a symbol. I put in my car because I'm wealthy and I have a car and I'm gonna put it. But even signs, even the city puts signs in the middle of the sidewalks.
But also we need to talk to UN Habitat to put, the 300 meters measure into their measurements of city planning.
Exactly. If you get hit by a car at 30 kilometers an hour, at 30, there is 5% of being killed, 5% probability. At 50, it's over 85%. We got to reduce the speed. I mean, all of us, we have a magnificent opportunity, but also a huge responsibility. The cities, the people that live in urban areas today is about 3.5 billion people. This is happening to all of us and will never happen again. It never happened before and will never happen probably in the future. Today we got about 3.5 billion people, and by 2057, in 40 years, we're going to have 7.2 billion. 7.2. Yesterday I was at the university at SLU, and I was telling the students, people tend to think that this is going to be very chaotic. Actually, it could be very nice and organized. We're going to increase by 3.7 billion within the lifetime of those students at SLU or at Malmö U or anywhere, at all of universities. Imagine that. It's incredible, the opportunity. By the way, the rate of growth of the population is going way down. It's almost at zero. But since there are so many more children and youth, it's going to continue growing for another 40 years. And then it's going to level at around 9.5 billion. Of those, 7.2 are going to live in cities. Imagine the responsibility, the sense of urgency that we all have. Malmö is going to grow by 30%. I live in Toronto. All the cities, the big cities in Canada, are going to grow by 50% in the next 25 years. Israel is going to double the population. In Africa, the 28 countries in Africa are going to double the population by 2057. And most of those cities are really in bad shape. So how are we going to do the cities? Sometimes if we're going to double the population living in cities in the next 40 years, maybe we should think, what have we done in the last 40? Because if we've done a good job, maybe we should just do more of the same. Remember that I said about UN Habitat and Vancouver? What has happened in the last 40? Well, one of the things, these 8 guys have more wealth than half of the world. What's good or bad? Well, imagine the political power when you own the media and the resources and so on. Look, this is how we build in cities all over the world. We have left housing in most countries, in 99%, to be an issue of supply and demand. So this is what happens when you leave it up to supply and demand. Supply and demand doesn't work in housing because, among other things, because there is no supply and there is no demand. The land is fixed. So it doesn't matter how much demand there is, there's going to be the same supply. So if we treat it just, because if I'm making these clickers and I charge too much money, then you're going to make them and charge less and the price is going to come down. But with the fixed price, we're leaving it up to the law of the jungle. This is what's happening everywhere. And also, we've been building in the last 40 years the cities thing about car, and not on people's happiness. And those two concepts are not compatible. And it's not only the low-income countries, the hyper-income countries, this is what they've been doing. Is this what we want to do in the next 40? Because this is what we've been doing in the last 40. And the countries start getting a little bit of money, like China and Russia, and they're following the same steps and the same chaos. It really doesn't work. So the last 40 years clearly are not a good example of what to do. When we look at cities all over the world, there are very, very few exceptions. One of them is Malmö, fortunately. There are some examples, but the majority of the cities in the last 40 years have not done things as good as maybe 100 years ago, or maybe what we should do in the next 40. So a lot of this is how do we want to live? So we need to improve the cities that we have today, but we also got to create great cities for many people. By the way, when there is population growth, it's not the city's fault. The cities are not responsible for the population growth. That's more the countries. But the cities are responsible for the how. How are we going to do the cities? People are, we need dense. This morning, the deputy mayor was a little bit worried if he said small or dense or dense. No, we need density because they're going to be much more sustainable. But we can have many ways. We can need 10 different ways of having the same density. So we can have a 40-story building every other block, or we can have cities of 5, 6, 7 stories next to each other, like we have in Barcelona or like we have in Copenhagen. Is this what we're going to be doing over the next 40 years? This is, we're building some neighborhoods in the suburbs where the children, the older adults, the people handicapped are kind of like a slave of someone who drives a car, because they could not walk to get an ice cream anywhere. So what do you think about that responsibility? Any comments? Imagine doubling the population from 3.5 billion to 7.2 billion. So what can we do about this? We said in the program to be, quote, exact, connecting people and nature for sustainable cities. So how are we going to do that? Because we know that we don't have a lot of chance now, but on top of it, we're going to double. Yes.
Hi. So I'll come back to this point of walkability, you say. Though I think from the urban design perspective, it's more important to consider context. Like, because we have, will have a good cycle tracks or good footpaths, But it's really important to have a context, like you have a restaurant, you have something which engages you to walk on the street. Because there have been case studies where it shows if you go to Brasilia, for example, you cannot walk for miles without having connection to anything. So it's important to have the infrastructure in place, but it's also important to have a human connectivity along your side. Because if you see in Sweden, right, it's in Malmö right now, if you see the place from right here, from the canal till here, you will find it's more engaging than before. Because you get engaged with the surroundings. You have a structure, you have a people, you have a restaurant, and that's what I guess Melbourne did. Because they revived the lanes. I mean, a lot of cities did like this. So I guess it is one of the most crucial things, because if you have if you don't have any building, or if you don't have anything, and if you just have a footpath, or you just have your cycle track, and you have bus stop like 1 kilometer away, you're not going to walk, you're going to take car.
So the built environment is very, by the way, I love Melbourne. So invite me again to Melbourne. I love Melbourne. But let's keep in mind, we're going to double the population. You go to Melbourne, and Melbourne is a really nice example, because Melbourne was very, very mediocre 30 years ago. Melbourne would not have been in the top 300 cities in the world. Now, it's in the top 5 in any rankings of quality of life. But it's only the municipality of Melbourne that is only 500,000 people, 500,000, 600,000. As soon as you leave the municipality of Melbourne, it's horrible. Horrible. You got 2 million people around it, and I'm not politically correct, I know, but I say things I might be wrong, but I see that I've been there. There was a fantastic plan on how to densify the existing metropolitan area, and all of a sudden there was a change of government, and the new government came up and extended, multiplied the area where developers could grow and made something totally car-oriented. So my thought is, how can it be that you have it right in your nose? You saw Melbourne, how it was transformed. The Yarra River was horrible. All factories throwing their garbage in the river. They got rid of the factories. They made a beautiful linear parks, walkable, bikeable, businesses flourished all over the place. People couldn't walk, and now they had all of these laneways that were dark and smelly and horrible, and the government invested, did partnerships with the private sector, gave them seed money, and now they got over 80 laneways that have restaurants and flower shops, and it's lively. No one wanted to live in Melbourne. Now everybody wants to live in Melbourne. But how can it be that the people, the 2 million or 3 million living on the suburbs, have not, they don't have to get into a plane and come to Malmö or Copenhagen. They see it right in their nose. Vancouver, same thing with Vancouver. Vancouver, where Cecil lives now, Vancouver also has 500,000 people, and everybody says, oh, Vancouver is so nice. The suburbs of Vancouver, there's 2 million people living in the suburbs of Vancouver. They are horrible, totally car dependent. You cannot walk anywhere, Surrey, BC, and all of this. So why is it that if we don't even learn in countries and cities that are well educated, that have a lot of money, and that have best practices right on their nose, how are people going to learn in these 28 countries in Africa that are going to double the population, or in places like many of the cities in China and Asia, Latin America? Any comments on that? Yes.
Educate the public, political concept.
Educated. Okay, there, yes, someone was going to make a comment? That is probably the most important topic. How can we do? Because if we want nature and sustainable cities, if we don't do something urgent, it's going to be too late. Yes?
I just wanted to comment before on, how to get out on the streets, how do we care about, how do we make all of us care about the surroundings? As we talked about Melbourne, and you got a tree that you actually passed by and you actually took care of that one because you had a responsibility or you passed by more often. Think of yourselves like, what street do you prefer to walk on? I choose the ones with nature or art. All the really beautiful art paintings that we have here in Malmö on some walls that are quite high buildings. They're so inspiring. I think we should really bring something that we all can care about. More trees to care about, that you have something responsibility or something that you can relate to. Art, a big wall that you like, or something that you can do something physically yourself, so that everyone has something to care of along that pathway on your way to walk.
I think it's almost like E.T., how to make that connection, that heart connection. How can we go from good practices to general practices? You know, it's something that we had, like parks, some of the things that make parks great. One of them is management. We need to have managed parks. Imagine the older adults, someone said older adults and children doing gardening. Here is a summer camp, 5 days, 4 nights, only grandparents and grandchildren. By the way, when we're talking about parks and we're talking about management, some people think, oh, management is synonymous of maintenance. No, no, no. Management is not maintenance. Maintenance might be 20% of management. The other 80% is the engagement, how to engage the faith groups and the schools and the seniors and everybody, how to have uses and activities. All of a sudden we got people here walking and running and skating and playing chess and having lunch. So the uses and the activities are very important. Engage the community. What is it that we are going to do? Engage citizens before, during, and after. Have resources. They got to be safe, but not just like in London that they put a sign, beware of the thieves. This is like an invitation of the thieves of the whole city. Come, because this is a good market. You need a lot of police when the parks are empty. You don't need when they are used. So we need to have activities so that they will be used. And that is something we need to have good fit with the city and different activities. We want to have parks in the winter. We're going to have it in the summer. Some people want to get married in the summer. Others want to get married in the winter. So that's fine. And it's not about having one fantastic, iconic park in the city, but it's having parks all over the place. People say, Gil, should we do small or big parks? We got to do both, because they satisfy very different needs. The small neighborhood park is where we develop a sense of belonging. We develop a sense of solidarity. We meet our neighbors. But we're not going to be able to play football, so we need medium-sized parks. And we're not going to be able to go canoeing, so we need large parks. We need a city-wide park system with passive, with active, with contemplative. That's also why I think that a good city is like a good park, totally integrated with nature, and extremely safe for everybody. I'm very optimistic when I see that some of the roads for cars are being turned into parks for people. It's so exciting. You know, very close to here, in Aarhus. There used to be a river going through here, and 40 or 50 years ago, people said, oh, efficiency. So they built a road on top of the river. And then about 10 years ago, people said, how can we attract people? How can we, this is very important because all cities in the world are competing on how to retain their best people, on how to attract. However you define best, can be the best engineer or pizza maker or coffee maker or medical doctor. If I'm a really good carpenter, I can live anywhere in the world. So where am I going to live? Wherever me and my family will have better quality of life. So they brought out the river. So you want to live in this city or you want to live in this city? As we are going to double the population, we got to decide. In Copenhagen, people say, oh, those European cities were built that way. No, in Copenhagen here, there were 6 lanes of cars 10 years ago. They took out the 4 lanes in the middle and they created a linear park of almost 2 kilometers long. And this is Spain, Madrid, and we have it now in Paris, and now Mayor Hidalgo is going to do a park. I was speaking at the World Bank the other day, and I was asking them, is this even ethical that you are lending money to do these elevated highways in developing countries? When most developed countries already went that way and didn't solve any issue, and now you're giving them money? Imagine how we're splitting the communities when we put this right through the community. In India, less than 10% of the households have cars. And look what they're doing with less than 10%. They're building elevated highways so fast that last year, this one tore down. So how can we move from these best practices that we have? You have a lot of good examples. How can we make those good practices into the normal thing to do? Any suggestions? Yes. Microphone here up front. We got only one mic now.
Well,
yes.
On the issue of connecting people and nature, do you know how much time children under 5 spend outdoors? Less than 3 hours per day. Actually, a person in jail spends more time every day under the sky in the courtyard. So Denmark invented in the 50s a very amazing system. It's called kindergartens in the forest, and it's just amazing. There are over 60 kindergartens in Copenhagen. Children leave early in the morning, just 10, 20 minutes outside the city to a school that is located in the forest, and they spend basically all day outside. I think this is a practice that could be generalized, and it would be amazing. They play freely, they learn by playing, and well, I hope this system spreads all over Europe and all over the world.
Great. At World Urban Parks, we have a committee that is called Children, Play, and Nature. Where actually Helena, where's Helena? Helena is the co-director of that committee. Very, very important. Those kind of things is what we need. Any other example on how do we make good practices become the normal thing? Because there cannot be like exceptions. Sometimes it's good, here, Helena's there, because sometimes it's good to have those acupuncture, because then it can multiply, but we need to have more. Yeah.
I've been sending text messages all day long to my to the person who's my boss in politics. What is it called? My commissioner, and she said all the time, "Why am I not there?" And I said, "Oh, there are no politicians here." Starting to feel a little bit bad about not inviting her to this conference, and now I feel like we need to have this conference to our politicians and to more practitioners. That's the way to reach out, I think. And maybe start the mayor forum at the...
Yeah, we need to mix the researchers and the practitioners. And in many other ways, sometimes I'm hired to go and work with public health, and almost 90% of the people are women. And I go and work, I get hired by transportation departments, and 90% are men. Maybe they should mix. We need more men in public health, and we need more women in transportation. We need to have that. You're totally right. And citizen engagement, let's engage. Someone said about the poor people how to engage. You know, the local community are the experts. They got to listen. It's not about copying. No, that's not like on the computer that we copy and paste. No, but it's how to adapt and improve. We can get that magnificent idea of the school, and that can be doable anywhere in the world. Rich, poor, small, big. It's totally doable, but then we can adapt it. So we honestly have to listen to, if I'm going to do a park and I ask my daughter, what do you want in this park? She's going to say, oh, let's do yoga. And in that other park, oh, let's do yoga. I said, daughter, not everybody wants to do yoga in the park. Some people want to have a fire pit. Other people want to have a pizza oven. In Toronto, some people are in neighborhoods where a lot of people from Pakistan live, then they have special ovens for special breads. Some people want to paint, some people want to do all kinds of activities. So asking, the children are fantastic. Ask the citizens. For example, as the children, we do a workshop with children. We go to the school. It's really simple. Anybody can do it. 30 kids. The 30 kids, we split them up into 6 groups of 5. So everyone has a digital camera. If they don't have one, we give them one. First 30 minutes, we give them a lesson how to take photos. Don't take a photo against the sun. Don't put the object in the middle because it's boring, blah, blah, blah. Then we go to the park with them. 6 kids, 5 kids, 1 adult for every 5 kids. We go to the park, but it's a nice combination because every kid has a camera. First, we give him a square, and then start thinking and looking at the park. It's amazing the things that they take photos of things that adults would never take. They take photos of rocks and leaves and plants and so on. And they take notes. Then they come back in the classroom. In each table for 5 kids, there's a computer. They download their photos. They download images that they would like. By the end of 8 hours, they have a visioning of the park. It doesn't matter if that visioning is implemented or not. Those kids will never look at a park with the same eyes. Let's engage the kids. So, and people say, oh, the kids is great because they're the future. No, it's not about the future. If we educate the children very, very well, they go home and they educate their parents. And that's part of what we need to do. For simple, do we ask these kids, why don't you do a drawing? How would you like your community to be when you have your parents' age and you have children of your own age? Look, Edgar is only 13, and he wrote here, we want few cars and more people walking and more people cycling. And then he didn't write, but he drew an area for pedestrians, for cyclists, for buses, and for cars. He's only 13. He doesn't know that we walk at 5 kilometers an hour, but he knows that if we mix pedestrians and cyclists, the pedestrian gets injured. If we mix cyclists and cars, the cyclist is going to get injured. And then he drew public parks and low building with street level activity. I was doing a workshop a few months later to the PhD students in the National University of South Korea, and I said, I hope you study very, very hard, because now the 13-year-olds can summarize Urban Planning 101 in one drawing. This was really nice. We're almost finished. 5 minutes, I'm done. Also, ask people for impatience. Sometimes I ask people for impatience and for orchids in communities. And what are the impatience? Think of impatience. Are things that are low cost, low risk, and high visibility. Low cost, low risk, and high visibility. That you can do in 12 months. You don't have to go to city council and change a law. You don't have to get a budget. You don't have to go to the school board. You can do it at the school or at the company or at the neighborhood. I'll give you an idea while you are thinking of ideas. One day a woman said, Gil, when I go to the park, walking home by the park, the sidewalk is very dark. And I said, no, but we're talking about low cost. Putting lights on the sidewalk is very expensive. She said, no, because when I'm walking, the sidewalk is very dark, but the street is very well lit. All I'm asking is someone to go up on the ladder, this light on the street, turn it 90 degrees, and share it. She said, it's the same post, the same cable, the same light. And, you know, the community come up with so many great ideas. So what are some ideas that we could get nature into people, into cities? Things that we could do, low cost, low risk. Keep it in your head, because maybe let's end with that. I'm going to go to one more example, and then we'll end the session with ideas. Less than 20 seconds. We'll do 15 ideas. And then you will do orchids, or we're not going to do orchids, but in meetings. Then what can we do in years 2 to 5? No more than 5. More than 5 days because we don't want to do it. So citizen engagement is so important. So we need to change. We need to change our minds in so many ways. Change, I know, is hard. That's why usually people don't do it, because it's a lot easier to do more of the same. My friend Jan Gell down the road, he said that, you know, in Copenhagen, the car was taking over in the 50s and 60s and 70s, where they're going to create the first pedestrian street. People said, pedestrian for people walking? They said, we have too many cars, and the weather is horrible. It's cold in the winter, it's hot in the summer, it rains all year round. But the number one reason why people didn't want pedestrian streets, they said, is because that's not part of our culture. You know, that's for the Italians. Because the Italians are loud and noisy and they like to be on the streets, but we are Danish and we are cold and quiet. We don't go out. Well, now the Danish are more Italian than the Italians. They love their pedestrian streets in the rain, in the summer, in the winter. This is City Hall in Copenhagen. They went from a car invasion to people places, more than 18 of those parking lots. So when you're going to change in any of your city, 3 recommendations. First, change is not unanimous. Change it. So when people say, oh no, let's not do it because there is some concern, they will always be concerned. Honestly listen to everybody, but make a decision. Because if you want change to be unanimous, you're going to have to water it down so much that it's not going to be changed any longer. 2, the general interest must prevail over the particular. So in any public meeting, tell people only talk on behalf of the general interest. So if you're going to widen a sidewalk and people say, oh, but my business, they say, no, don't tell me about your business. Give me the same argument, but frame it on behalf of the general interest. And 3rd, when you say no to something, you're also saying yes to something else. So when you are saying, no, let's not do this campaign to plant 100,000 trees, you are saying yes to more bad quality of air. You are saying yes to more flooding. You are saying yes to so many of these other horrible things. So when you say no to something, you're also saying yes. So the EU, you have so many possibilities to influence the world, not only to influence yourselves. Please be very ambitious. I want to be very selfish with the EU, that no complacency. Don't just say, look, Copenhagen is at 41% people cycling, and then they say, oh, we're the best. No, now they want to go to 50%. Barcelona, people are really walking, but they say we're going to increase not by 5 or 10%, by 66%. They have a grid, and now they're creating these big blocks where one road is for mixed walking, cycling cars, the next 2 are walking. Then and so on. So be ambitious, because when you are ambitious, when I'm saying is you got to benchmark with the best. You got the universities, you got the money, you got the system, and I'm being selfish because you pull everybody behind you. And when I'm saying about that is be ambitious about having sustainable and equitable cities. By the way, equity is so important. When I think of the cities that should be cycling in Europe, obviously it should be Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece. They have the best weather. They're pretty flat. Where is it that people bike? In Denmark, in Germany, in the Netherlands. Horrible weather. One of the things I feel, the big thing is because there is much more equity. You go to Copenhagen or you go to Malmö and the mayor bikes, and the owner of the corporations bike, the rich and the poor and everybody. You go to Rome and the mayor is biking in Rome and people make fun of them. So the issue of equity. So it's so important for me to talk about cycling in Latin America. I had to come to Copenhagen and Amsterdam and do a video so that people will see, look, these cities have a high income level, a high level of education, and people are biking. So we need to develop a sense of urgency. Remember, we're going to double the population. And the sense of urgency, as well as a sense of a shared vision of a city. How do we want to live? And we got to move from talking to doing. And some of you might say, oh, but we're doing, but we got to do more, and we got to do it faster. We got to change hearts, and we got to change minds. And then the hearts and the minds are going to work together in creating vibrant cities and healthy communities where all people are going to live happier. But I was going to finish here, but I'm going to finish in 1 minute when we have 15 ideas, low cost, low risk, high visibility, that we can, and I'll be exactly so that I don't misquote. We are working today and tomorrow on connecting people and nature for sustainable cities. What can we do when we go back to our cities, to our regular jobs? What can we do to connect people and nature for sustainable cities? Low cost, low risk, high visibility. We can give you more wine if you want. Yes. So how many microphones do we have? Just one? The other 2 left? Where are the other 2? Okay, so we're going to run because it's 15. Yes, 15.
Give school children trees to plant in their gardens.
Excuse me?
give school children trees to plant in their gardens.
Exactly. Great. 14. Yes.
I think Malmö has a good example of low risk, low cost intervention in the city. You can actually just use the concept of testing or piloting the use of a certain street in the city. So just take the decision, use the street perhaps part of the year in a different way. Just redistribute space to the ones that walk and cycle.
Exactly. Don't be afraid. Pilot. If it works, make it permanent. If it doesn't work, change it. Okay, 13. 13. We don't go with 13. Yes. And there's another one there. Yes, 13.
What you can really do is you can plan cities according to how people walk, how people cycle, like transit-oriented development. And that's one thing which is one of the crucial things, because you can plan your green infrastructure, like you can always integrate green infrastructure with the transportation and land use planning, but transit-oriented development would be key to plan.
Yeah, land use and mobility is two sides of the same coin. 11. Yes, 11.
More power for the inhabitants themselves. Let them themselves decide.
Great. 10. The people sitting down, you're too comfy. Anybody sitting down, you haven't said anything. There's 10 left. Yes.
Try something new. Get involved. I was gonna go to a urban green garden participation today, but I could not because of this, but it's fine. But still, try something new and you'll open your minds.
Exactly. Try something new. There is no risk. Very risk-free things. 9. We got 9 left. 9 ideas. Low cost, low risk, high visibility. Yes.
I think it's great in Edinburgh and probably in other European cities. The council have let members of the public take over areas that are going to be developed, but probably not for a couple of years, and let them have their own gardens and take over ownership of it until it's developed. So.
Exactly. There is no risk. Let them use it. Once they develop, okay, they move somewhere else. Okay, 8. 8. Yes.
Increase accessibility. So instead of building a stair, build a ramp.
Exactly. Accessibility is so important. We got to have cities that are good for everybody. So accessibility is critical as a normal part of every day. 7. Yes.
Allow communities to dictate where Parks Department budgets are spent.
Yes, we need to fund those park departments and invest in that. But we need to make a better case. Remember, you know who's really good at making the case for money? It's not the people that want more nature. It's the police. The police goes to the politicians and blackmail them. Say, oh, if you want more people dying, okay, cut my budget. What? The reality is that you need police up to a certain level. Beyond that, it's much better to invest in nature and in parks and in trees to save lives. So we gotta go and say, if you wanna save lives, invest in nature, invest in parks. Okay, 5. Yes.
Here. One
Yes.
Glasgow. Involve students that are actually studying landscaping in making projects for towns, and after that, just use those projects if they're okay, after what you shown the projects to the community.
Excellent. Someone was saying, let's mix more the researchers and the practitioners. Let's also mix more the universities and the students with the cities. It's a win-win. 4.
Enhance access to informal urban green spaces that many people have the chance to interact with wild urban nature.
Yes, it's transformative on people's lives. 3. Last 3. Yes.
Well, that's something we could do now. We all like Malmö very much, so we should take pictures of whatever we like and we can share them so that our cities can see them and then maybe act upon it.
Exactly. In many ways, it's a privilege to be able to be here in beautiful Malmö or wherever we go. Things that we like, take the photo, share it, let other people see that have not seen how to make that that pilot project on the street, how to change the use of one square, how to change. Take photos and share. Let's be generous with cities. If you have done something, let other cities have it for free. Let's not charge. Let's exchange. Last two comments, because Thomas is going to kill me because it's 6:15 and we got to leave. Last 2 comments.
Prevent the extinction of natural experience. Invite people out to nature. Show nature to them. maybe 50 people to the end of the year, everybody is a start.
That's a fantastic idea. Remember, the other day I was with the head of parks, national parks of the US, and I said, who's your user of the national parks? He said, the typical user is a 59-year-old man, white, well-educated, and upper income. And he said, there are not that many of those. So how are you going to get more women, Hispanics, blacks, young, children, and so is through that. We need how to get nature everywhere, because it's not about national parks. If people don't have nature in their house, they probably won't have nature, don't have nature in the school. If they don't have it in the school, they don't have it in the neighborhood. If they don't have it in the neighborhood, in the city. So we need interwoven network of nature everywhere. And the last one? Yes.
Make kids walk to school. If we will bring kids to everyday walking, we will have the pressure on the adults to improve public space for walking the really vulnerable group, and will reach probably also the improvement of the public space in the manner also of the hiring the, right people who will also bring in the nature, the trees and everything you need for the comfortable walking.
Wonderful. And if possible, walk with the kids. Set the example. What a fantastic bonding time. When you see any park that is designing a playground, make sure you design a cozy place for the parents and grandparents, so they will have that magical time together. And there will be nothing as good as leading by example. So if you are taking the car just to go 2 blocks to visit a friend, then you're not going to tell the kid, walk for the ice cream. No. Show them that you also walk or bike. So in just a few minutes, you saw 15 great ideas of things that we could do, low cost, low risk, and high visibility. Imagine the potential. But there's not going to be a Martian coming down. It's up to all of us. And in many ways, all of us that have had the privilege to get an education and to get possibilities to access to information, we also have a responsibility with the rest of the world on how to share it, and how to generate change so that we have a better world for everybody, especially the most vulnerable, the children, the older adults, and the poor. Thomas, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for staying so late here. Have a wonderful conference.
Thank you very much, Gil. Thank you.